Welcome to the Sisterhood of the Rose podcast. I'm Lily.
And I'm Jess.
And we're here to lead you into deeper spiritual embodiment.
What does it mean to be spiritual and to live a soul-led life? We're going to dive deep into how we navigate our own journeys and get into the realness of it all.
We created this podcast for you to step into empowerment and become the leader in your life.
We invite you to walk this path with us. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So today we are diving deeper into last week's episode where we talked all about human design, but embodied human design. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, we definitely recommend you start there before diving into this episode, because we literally just could not stop talking when we were recording this episode. So we actually divided it into two. So this week is just a continuation on of my learnings through my human design course, and we're actually diving really deep into authorities. So we are super excited for you guys to hear, and we hope you enjoy.
And there's one more thing that I want to talk about.
Okay.
And that's our authority and my emotional authority, because that has been a really, really big revelation for me. And so our authority in human design is basically what is our inner guide to help us with making aligned decisions in our life. And so I think there's 8 or 6. I don't remember how many there are. Do you remember how many there are? I think there's 6 or 7. I don't know. There's quite a few. But I'm an emotional authority in human design. And basically what that means is that I'm not meant to make decisions in the moment. I'm meant to give myself at least 24 hours to literally feel into things, to feel into if I like things, if I want to do something, if I don't want to do something. And then also it's people that are defined emotionally, which is a lot of people, it's half the population, get into high and low states of emotion for no reason. They don't need circumstances to determine if they're sad or very happy. It's like just literally waking up and being like, I'm in a bad mood or I'm in a great mood. And so really coming into this is something that I really took away the first time that I learned human design, is like I did really implement the not making decisions on the spot. That's the one thing I would say that I really implemented into my life, which has helped significantly, because I used to say yes to so many things and I would regret it, especially like monetarily. I feel like I spent so much money that I'd be like, why did I buy that course or that program? Like you basically, when you're emotionally defined, your mood really affects your decision making. And so it's not the case for people who are undefined emotionally, and Lily is undefined emotionally, which is really interesting. So the biggest things though that I like really want to talk about with this is specifically what I've come into in like this week specifically in the program has been more about connecting with our authorities. And I've really come to realize that I have a lot of shame around being in low emotions and being felt by other people in those low emotions. And that is actually a shadow of people with emotional waves, because we feel like we want people to feel us being happy all the time, but we get these really intense like surges and literally waves of like sadness or irritability, or just not wanting to do anything, not wanting to be around anyone, and just being in that space. And when we're around other people, they can really feel that from us. Like even if we're trying to emanate that we're fine, it's an energetic thing that people can feel. And like Lily can speak to this, because I was going through some stuff emotionally when I was visiting her, and I was like trying to be, upbeat and happy, but I just was like I couldn't totally like get through that. And my specific wave is very attached to my connection with the people closest to me. which is what I learned. I actually did not know that. I just learned that. And that was like massive for me, because there's 4 different types of emotional waves that you have if you're emotionally defined, and it depends on what channel you have in your chart, which is a bit more complex. But what I learned was that my wave specifically is connected to if my emotional needs are being met in my closest relationships. And I was literally like, okay, this makes so much sense, because that's a really big nuance for me of like, yes, there are moments where I'm in highs and lows for no reason, but a lot of it as well is connected to if I'm having like problems with certain people in my life. And if I'm not voicing my needs, and if I'm not voicing, how I'm feeling, and being really like open and honest about that. And that was just mind blowing for me. And it just really made me like, that's actually a thread. That's something that I've been working on in another way of I've been really diving into attachment theories and learning my attachment theory, which I feel like coincides with that. In basically what I've been learning and uncovering there. And it's been helping me with like learning how to understand what I'm feeling and how to voice it. And then I've been noticing that when I'm like having those really open and clear communication conversations with the people that are like closest to me, my emotional wave is much more steady. So like when I'm in a high or low for no reason, I can handle it better. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that has been like the crashing, because basically with emotional waves, and again, it depends on what type of wave you have, which is depicted in your chart. But my wave is like a build-up wave of like, it just starts to build and build and build, and then it crashes. And I usually need to have some sort of emotional release, like crying, or just like something triggering me, and just like having an outburst. And that definitely happens. But the crash is more significant if I'm feeling uneasy or like my needs aren't being met in my relationships.
Wow. Yeah, I did not know that there was multiple different types of waves, honestly.
Yeah,
So that's
there's
news to
4.
me.
It's huge, because it's like my partner, he's emotionally defined as well, but his wave is completely different than mine. And he definitely, like, we both get into highs and lows for no reasons, and like we're both super aware of that, and we're both able to like honor each other in that. But like his wave is connected to like other things versus mine. And I was like explaining to him all of this, and he was like, wow, like, oh, okay, like that makes a lot of sense. And just like, obviously he's like the closest person in my life, so him knowing that is like so helpful too, to for him to know my process and to know that that's key for me. And so it was just like that piece. I had so many reflective moments where I was like, okay, this explains why I literally like burst open in that instance, and why I wasn't able to, like, it's literally like the bursting. And I feel like I burst when my wave crashes, and then all of a sudden I feel calm. and and that's literally an emotional wave. Like, and I was telling you when I was visiting you, I was like, I struggle sometimes with my emotions. Like sometimes they're so big, and so this is where it's like really coming into that of like understanding them and understanding the gifts that they have to bring, because within that awareness as well of like my process is also understanding like how the sadness and the lows that I feel really help me to access deeper parts of myself. And that's something that I've really come into awareness as well. And like on Monday, I was in an emotional low for no reason. And I was watching the Grammys performance. I was watching Olivia Rodrigo perform on the Grammys, and I love her voice. And I've been wanting to take voice lessons for so long. And it literally inspired me to like finally book a voice lesson and be like, I'm taking voice lessons, like just for me, for myself. And I told my vocal coach, I was like, I like to sing when I'm sad. Like, that's when I like to sing, is when I'm sad. And she was like, that is really good that you have that awareness, and we're going to dive into that. And I'm just like, yeah. And so, maybe that's a part of my process of how I just want to, emote. But what I'm saying is that it was that sadness that like brought me into that space of like doing that for myself and going and booking that for myself. And so there's a lot in the program of like them really cultivating, for people that are defined emotionally to really be able to see what the gifts are in those lows, because those lows are going to happen no matter what. They're always going to be there. And so, and if this is a little confusing, like for people listening, if you're undefined emotionally, so like for Lily, she's undefined emotionally. So it doesn't mean that she doesn't experience high and low emotions. It just means that her emotions are dictated by like her circumstances or like things that are going on in her life. Like she doesn't just have this like unpredictable, like high and low, just like being happy for no reason, being sad for no reason. Like it is what's going on in her life that is going to make her like feel that. And then on the opposite side of that, she's like super empathetic to other people's emotions, which is also a whole other aspect. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also interesting about like the wave inspiring you to take action. I mean, it just reminds me of, actually, this is funny because I was like kind of in an emotional, maybe you could call it emotional low last night, and I like pulled up a couple cards for myself, and it was just saying like the void, like just give in to it.
Mm.
And that's kind of like what it's reminding me of with you, where it's just like there's like a surrendering, giving in to the experience that then transforms it. And yeah, it's funny. It was like the void. And then I got this other card called Sacred Tears, and it was just like emotional card. And then the third card was the transmutation. It was like the fire spark. So it's like, I think even as an undefined, like I still go through, periods of things like Jess was saying, like especially in related to circumstances. But I definitely feel more of like there's like something that disrupts me versus it's me having like an emotional flare, like it's definitely like I get disrupted versus like, yeah. And I actually, my partner's undefined too. And it's, let me tell you, undefined centers, undefined emotional centers, it does not mean that you're not emotional. Trust me on that one. Because the other thing that I want to say from my side of it is like, I amplify things. So it's like when I feel something from someone else, I like feel it times 10. And like, me and my partner are both the same way in that. And so it's like, maybe from someone looking in, like, they'd be like, oh, like Lily's a really emotional person, like maybe from the outside looking in, but it's like a different sense of emotion because it's in like response to something. And I might not be able to understand what that is though. Like I could be going to the grocery store and be like sad, but there is this, I do feel like there is this part of me that is quite like neutral, like quite like steady neutral emotionally. But I would say, like, looking back on my life, I haven't experienced that for a lot of my life because I've felt really strong, like, emotions a lot of my life, like really, really strong, deep emotions, very, very deep things. And so just a nuance there. But I will say, if I don't know if you have any, like what gates you have defined, but I only have like one or two, I think, defined in my emotional center. I have an open center, or it's not open, it's undefined, but I do know a couple people with completely open centers. And it's funny because people who I have, like someone who's very, very close to me who is a completely open center, and they have like such a gift of neutrality. Like, oh my gosh, like so emotionally untriggered. Like if you could think of like the most untriggered person ever. And yet, like, it's like what I've experienced through this person and like witnessed for them is like they have like such a emotional intelligence about them. Like they're like grandfather, grandmother wisdom intelligence, because it's like they feel everything. And yet like they have like such a wisdom around it. But I mean, it was definitely like a process for this person to understand, like, why am I feeling all of these ways? And like, I mean, this person in my life is just like very spiritually just developed, and has really like developed that emotional intelligence. But you know, it can come through in multiple ways. Like, for instance, you could feel as like someone undefined, you could feel like sad, but you could also feel like pain or like other like random things that you wouldn't even classify as emotional, you know, but like everything has an emotional root, you know? So yeah, it's like a the emotional, I think this emotional center in general is just like the Wild West. Like there's so much going on there. And I mean, the core of the human experience is about emotion, so
It's
important.
so true. And like what you said, I thank you for sharing all of that. I'm so glad you did, because what you said too about the person in your life who has this gift, you know, they have that completely open center, but they did have to develop that. And I think that that's a big piece for people with undefined emotional centers. Like we're talking about undefined, and because the solar plexus in human design is the emotional center, and if it's defined, then it's your authority. It like trumps all over other authority. I mean, it's not like more important, but it like if it's defined, it's your authority. And if it's not, then your authority is something different. And so it does go hand in hand with like being defined and undefined as well. But I think the big piece for people with undefined emotional centers is to develop that awareness of like, okay, I'm feeling this and like I may not know where it's coming from, but I can know like, is this mine or is it not? And I think that that's so key, because it is that nuance, like what you said of like, you mentioned that it is something that comes in, something, you know, outside of you that you can feel puts you in that state versus just like an inner way, an internal way of being, which is really the big difference for
Mm-hmm.
emotionals and non-emotionals. And so yeah, just really cultivating that awareness, especially if you find that you're someone that you feel it's so intense, so intensely, because another nuance to this is people with undefined emotional centers can feel everybody else's emotions. So they can feel and amplify them, right? People with emotional or with defined emotional centers, our like empathy and our sympathy comes from if we've experienced what somebody else is going through emotionally before. Does that make sense? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like so for me, like, and I've noticed this to be true. Like I learned this in my actually previous human design course, and I've noticed this to be true in my life, is that I only have an emotional reaction to somebody else usually if I've experienced something similar. Like if I see somebody else crying, it's usually like it hits me if it's like something that is like I've experienced before emotionally in some way, and that can be very nuanced, or it's somehow subconsciously hitting something for me that like it's based on my life experience. Whereas people who are non-defined emotionally, literally anything, like they can feel anything, like it doesn't have to be related to their life experience, like, and but they can feel it, and they can like immediately burst into tears because they're like, I just feel what this person is feeling. And so that's actually been a pretty big but little nuance that I've noticed within, because sometimes I'm like, oh, like why am I not reacting to that? Like I'm definitely very emotional, and I notice it's because, oh, I haven't experienced anything like that. So I don't have like a emotional connection to it. I'm just like really in my own emotions. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was just feeling called to share that.
Yeah, that's interesting because yeah, I definitely can resonate with just like the bursting into tears at like a commercial. Like
Yes. Or like movies, like people with undefined emotional centers and like really like sad movies will have like such strong reactions to it. Yeah, and like people who are like I only have super strong reactions to movies that are really sad if it like hits something within me, within my life experience in some way. Like it doesn't
mm,
have to be like directly correlated to like, you know, if someone's dad is dying in the movie, maybe like my dad is still alive, but maybe it's hitting something else that's happened to me in my life and it's making me have that strong reaction, or it's not hitting anything for me. And so I'm not having a
mm.
strong overreaction than like Lily, who would probably be like bursting.
Yes. Yes is the answer to that question. I would be. Um but yeah, I've always been so empathetic and also very sensitive to visual stimulation for sure. I think it's just like the imagination part of it, but also just like movies feel so real to me, and because of that it's been just definitely like a really strong boundary for me with film. Like for
Mm.
sure, like I cannot watch a range of things that will just it's like it feels like it permeates me. You know, like
Mhm.
it feels like it like seeps in, and it's like I almost it's like my psyche really absorbs it. And so, you know, maybe that there's more to that than just the emotional component that we're talking about here. But one other thing that I wanted to mention for people who have undefined emotional centers like me, is that there's a really big tendency in that population, at least from my experience of what I've seen with friends, what I've seen with myself, is to completely shut down emotionally. And this I see happening at a young age. It's just like a subconscious thing. It's too much. And so we shut it down. And I remember, like, I'll just share this little story because I think it illustrates it quite well. Is like when I was young, I had a really hard time eating meat because I was just really empathetic and I really couldn't do it. I really couldn't. And so that was like a big chunk of my childhood. Just like couldn't bring myself to do that. And then I went into like, you know, my young, like adult, like teenage years, and things were like happening that I was really struggling with a lot of things. And as most of us do in that time, it's just like a big growth period, and usually a lot of like, you know, initiations around that time, I think, for most people. And I remember like very specifically, like also like piggybacking on that, like I was super connected to animals, like really connected to my dog, and yeah, just like really strong animal sympathy. And I remember one day I had like gone off to college and came home, and I was just like, "Hey," to my dog. And my mom like brought it up to me later, and she's like, "You don't really like play with your dog, like our dog anymore. Like why?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know." But like I did know because I felt too strongly like connected to him and to animals in general, and I had kind of shut that off for myself, emotionally, you know, because ultimately our pets will like eventually pass, and like that is devastating, you know. I just wasn't ready to like face that. And I also shut off a lot of my own like emotional capacity. Like I remember feeling really really deep pain in like certain years in my life, like through breakups and stuff, and like shutting it off, like really shutting it off. And like we do have the potential to do that as undefined emotional centers, but that isn't actually in our highest and best alignment because we're putting it somewhere. Like we're storing it somewhere. It's not like we completely go dark. And so for me, there was definitely like a rethawing experience where
Mm.
I like had to really start to crack open again and like start to cry again, start to feel again. Um, and so I just put that out there, you know, because I think there's, you know, so much wisdom within the undefined where it's like, I can really maintain this neutral place. I can still feel everything and I can really maintain this versus completely shutting off and like not allowing any emotions to come in. And I tend to see if there's like one emotion that we can't fully control, it's anger, but we can really shut down like everything else. We can shut down the pain, the sorrow, the sadness. The anger is like something that's like really nervous system triggering for us. And like, it's really hard to like, that's like our one thing that we usually feel safe feeling. But I just wanted to mention that as well, because I think that that can be a nuance for people.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did. I think that's a very important and beautiful share. And what I was going to say before you even said that was I do feel like one of your gifts as an energy healer is your ability to feel so empathetically. I really think that that is a gift that you have in just the work that you do. And then, you know, you went into sharing that story, and it just goes to show how you've turned something that was a struggle for you into a gift because you also work with animals. And I think that that is really it's a gift, and it's a gift that you have. And that's where it goes to show that like we can turn these struggles into gifts. We can. And we're meant to. We really are. We're all meant to. It's like with Lily and like, you know, the shutting down of the emotion because she was feeling it too intensely, but then like turning it back on, and now she's using it in a very purposeful way through her energy healing work that she does with people and animals. And then like for me is like using my emotions in ways that like allow me to access deeper parts of myself. They allow me to move at my own pace. They allow me to slow down, and they allow me to like have other people around me accept slowing down as well. And that's the biggest thing, because again, if you're emotionally defined in human design, you're not meant to make on the spot decisions, which is like a big part of our society. And so I still find myself when I'm like, I need to think about it. I'll get back to you tomorrow. I still find myself getting reactions of like, why do you need to think about it? And I'm just like, there's not really anything I need to think about. I need to feel about it. And like,
Yeah.
I need to check in. And that was like a really big nuance as well, is like, it's been said that people with emotional authorities feel uncertainty a lot around their decisions, which is true. But what De Luna really highlighted is they were like, the only thing that you will feel certain about is if the decision or the opportunity or whatever it is makes you happy. So the big piece is understanding and knowing, like, and tuning in and being like, will this make me happy? And like, you don't need to know anything else around it, like anything else around it. And that was really illuminating for me, because as a manifesting generator, I also have a sacral response. And so it gets really confusing because I'm like, well, wait, my body said yes to this. And so why, you know, it's just confusing. It feels like I'm operating at two paces, where like I want to go really fast, but then my emotional wave slows me down. But at the end of the day, it's my emotional wave that has the upper hand, and that is really meant to be like the guiding light in especially in bigger moments, basically, of like things, especially things that are like really going to impact my life in the long term, and decisions that are going to impact my life in the long term. Like, if I'm deciding what I want to eat that day, I can listen to my sacral, because that's like in the moment. I'm like, oh, what do I want for lunch? Oh, I want this. But for like, okay, do I want this job? That is less about how my body feels, and it's more about, is it going to make me happy? Do I really feel like this is going to make me happy? And that was a really big nuance that I just learned. Is like, I was like a little too focused on like, what is my body saying, when I should really just be focusing on like, what am I feeling? Like, and that was like really, it's just been really big for me, because I feel like in the human design space, especially with emotional authorities, it's like commonly said, well, you're never going to be 100% certain you're never going to feel 100% certain, because you have all these emotions that you're feeling into around the decision. But it's like, actually, I can be certain that of one thing. And the one thing that I'm certain of is that it feels like it's going to make me happy. And so I'm going to move from there. So that is something that I'm really excited to like implement moving forward in my life, especially for bigger decisions. And we'll see where it leads.
Oh wow. I love that. I love when things can be like a little definitive, you know, when it's like so there's so much going on in the human design system, but that seems like so easy. Just like I mean, not to like make it like I know it's still going to be something you have to feel into, but it's like does this make me happy, you know? And just like being honest
Simple.
about that. I love that for you.
Yeah, it's simple. It's like
Mhm.
it's just I know exactly what you mean. It's just
Mhm.
it brings so much more simplicity to such a complex aspect of the system. So,
Yeah, you're yes, exactly. Yeah. And I feel like you need that within everything else with the emotional center. It's like at the end of the day, does this just make me happy? Like
yeah, literally. And that's just yeah, and we're learning about the emotional or about the authorities this week. So it's like I just came into that this week and I was like, wow, I've never heard it broken down like that. I've never heard it explained like that. And it just felt like my whole body like released when I felt just like at ease and I was like, wait, it can be easier.
yes, I feel release. Speaking of
You
having
can
an
feel
open
my
emotional,
emotions.
yeah, speaking of feeling an emotional or open emotional center, but yeah, I mean, yeah, like when just we're gonna wrap up this podcast like soon here, but like through everything that we're talking about, it's like when it comes to the implementation, it has to be simple, it has to be direct, you know, or else you're just going to drive yourself crazy. And so I think finding the right course, the right people to learn from that make it digestible, like you're saying. I think that's half of it. Really is.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
huge. Is like how it's being delivered. Like, is it resonating? And is it
Mhm.
hitting a chord? Because I've learned human design from multiple people, and this is the this is the first time that it's really like coming into me. It's like I do also think I'm more energetically available to like look at myself through this lens, truthfully. Um, but a huge part of it is the way that it's being delivered. So shout out to Day Luna. They're the
Yeah.
best. But yeah.
Okay, I'm so curious about my authority. And so we have to like either talk about that like at another time or off camera. So I just want to say, you know, for anyone listening, I am a pure generator. So I have a sacral authority, but my sacral is tied to my spleen. And so this has been it's been a journey for me too. I honestly I think authority is like where it's at when it comes to like really like it sometimes feels like a leap of faith to like follow your authority. And I really don't like that because it's like it should feel like the easiest thing, but because of like our minds and like what we think we should do and all of those things it can feel challenging. But I'm just really curious what you learn about mine or like what you have to say about mine. And it doesn't have to be now. I know we're kind of like running up on time, so
Well, what I will say is that you're living yours in real time with the experiences that you've been having because um oh, there was one thing that I wanted to share with you. Because they did share the changing your mind. Because this yeah, they shared that. So they were saying the sacral is so in the moment that you are going to like change course a lot and that you can have a fear of being flaky, literally. And you verbatim told me, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you were like,
please
I think
do.
Lily was I was helping Lily, I was supporting her through making a decision earlier this week. And she was like, I just don't want to seem flaky. And she was like, I'm just so confused because like this was a yes for me. It was a full yes. And now it's a no. And this is like full on example of sacral authority is and that's the challenge because I feel like for me, I was always thinking, oh, sacral authorities, like they can make decisions in the moment. It's easy for them. Like I have to wait, like all these things. And actually, it's not as easy because sacrals, they change their body changes and adapts to based on what's a yes for them in the now. And Lily has been living that real time and really allowing herself to follow that. She's gone through a few things recently, like where she's made decisions and she's followed her authority of like changing course. And that's when she was like, I don't want to be seen as flaky. And that's a really big thing with people with sacral authorities is feeling that way, because there's such a big change in the momentum of where you're being guided. But it really is about like anchoring into that trust and that confidence of acting and being like, I just have to follow what my body, what my intuition is saying. I have to. And like, how did that work out for you when you did that?
Uh, yeah. Um, I mean, Jess is right. Like, I really think that this is an initiation for me into like my next form of embodiment, to be honest. Because I basically had a dream about that. And also, I'm just experiencing it. And, after I made the decision to say yes, and then the day later, I'm like, shoot, it's no now. I was really frustrated because I was like, why am I going through this like unnecessary struggle? Like, was I wrong? Like, why do I have to do this? Like, this seems unnecessary. This seems like it's too hard. However, like, after I made the decision and said no, I felt better. Like, I was like, yeah, like, this is the way that I need to go. But, to be honest, like, it's not like an easy thing for me yet. Like, it's not, because it's like very much something that I have to like fully surrender to like me, like just operating in this way.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a yes. And then tomorrow I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, like I'm not available anymore. And like being okay with that, like, hello, like we live in this world, like how does that work, like on a logistical standpoint. And so yeah, I'm wrestling with it, but there is this like invitation for me that I definitely feel like energetically, where it's just like, just give it up and just like be that way. Just like go with it. And there's a lot around me like stepping more into my feminine in that way, where it's like the feminine isn't necessarily consistent. The feminine isn't about like holding this, super strict structure and being even accountable. Like I spent a lot of my life never ever being unaccountable. Like I spent a lot of my life never ever ever being flaky, like always being dependable, always being reliable, always being that person. And this actually, like a friend um brought this through for me. She was like, yeah, like I'm getting this message for you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm experiencing this. So yeah, it's been definitely interesting. And I think as we grow, like this is just kind of like a thought I'm having now, but like as we grow into our human design, it's like more pieces turn on. And I've been, playing with my sacral response for quite some time. And I feel like now it's becoming like really truly embodied with the sacral response. And that's been definitely pushing up against some conditioning. We'll say that. We'll use that word for me. But yeah, it was really helpful for Jess to support me through that and to help me, see that it wasn't wrong to do what I was doing.
Yeah, and it's an adjustment for, I mean, I can't even imagine. I what you're saying is like so valid, and like, yeah, who knows if you'll ever feel fully comfortable operating in that way. But what I will say for people, if you do have a sacral response, is like the more that you can understand and operate and have these conversations in this way, like that's something that I really value with Lily, is like her and I just human design lingo, like we understand each other from a human design standpoint, which has, I feel like for me, allowed me to have a really different relationship with you than anyone else in my life. And it's only just beginning in that way. But, there was an instance where her sacral said yes in the moment, something related to the podcast. And then it was a no literally later that day. And the outcome of her, she followed it and she listened to it and she was like, this is now a no for me. At first I was like, well, wait, we already made this decision. But then I was like, okay, but wait, like you're right. And I agree with you. And so the outcome of that was ultimately for like the highest and best of everything, like us, the podcast, it made, it made things better. But also it's been a lesson for me of like trusting her in that, and trusting that like she's being guided like that for a reason, and I need to trust that as someone that's in her life. And it's not always easy, you know, like it's not easy, and this is going to go for everyone in your life. You know what I mean? Is like me being like, okay, I just have to trust that like she's being guided to this for a reason, and I'm being impacted, and I just need to trust that it's for a damn good reason. And in that little instance it was. But you know, I'm being initiated in that way of like, by you following that your sacral, like I'm being initiated into a level of trust when I'm around you, and when it's like certain things. And I think that that's going to be a lesson for everyone in your life the more that you step into this. And that's just, it's a completely new way of living.
I got like really emotional when you said that,
I know,
because
I got emotional too.
I was like, because I mean, that's like the biggest gift that you can give someone, is to trust their unique process, and to like trust their unique energy and like how it's supposed to flow. And like to be offered that is like the greatest gift, I believe, really, that you can offer anyone. Um, and yeah, like I feel like it's initiating me too, because it's like it's just not giving any room for me to like be in my mind. It's not giving me any room to be like, is this person going to hate me after I do this? You know, like, and to be honest, it's facilitated deeper connections in my life already. In the 2 months that this has like started clicking into place for me, even with the situation that we were talking about with Jess supporting me, like this person that I said no to, I didn't even know. But like the way that the person responded to me built my confidence in me deciding to change my mind, because they were open to it. They were understanding. They were like, hey, you know, and it was my vulnerability stepping forward that paved the way for that connection. And that's happened multiple times. Like it wasn't just that time. And so, yeah, like it's definitely a totally new way of being, as Jess said. And it's like, it feels like it's asking a lot, and yet of the people around me. And so I'm still wrestling with that, you know, and like reframing what that means, because at the end of the day, if we are following our designs and we are, you know, saying yes to living this way, then we also have to trust that what is best for me in the moment is also best for the other person involved. That's just part of the deal. Like if you're going to live the way that human design asks you to live, you can't just live selectively by it. You know, you got to really do it, you know? And so for me, I was like, yeah, okay, like if I'm in, I'm in, you know, and it's like, okay, this is happening, and I have to give that, a shot. And one other thing I want to mention about this too is that it almost feels like um I have to make a decision. Like one thing that I've tried to like hack is like, oh, maybe I'll just wait to make the decision, and I'll just wait and I'll see how I feel tomorrow. Doesn't work. I need to pull the trigger. I need to do it, and then that initiates like the next step. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the most annoying thing, because it's like, okay, cool. Felt the response. I'll just wait, you know, and see. But like that's actually operating like an emotional wave.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's like when I make the decision, perfect. It's like I step through the doorway, amazing. And then it's like, what am I responding to now? It's just like it's a constant momentum. And like anytime that I try to stop that and be like, okay, I felt that, but I'm not gonna commit, because if I commit, then that means I might have to back out if my sacral says no tomorrow. So I'm gonna like stop and wait and try to like re-feel into it. It just doesn't work. Like I have to commit. I have to say yes or no, and then I have to let it happen and like trust that like if my response is going to change, it's going to change. And then it's like a moving through the doorway, like, and that
Mm.
momentum is like necessary.
That feels really big. Like I just feel like that feels really big for almost it's just like key from your lived experience of how you can't manipulate, like you can't manipulate like the universe and the way it works with you and your energy body. Like you can't.
I know. I
Like
know.
that feels just like really big.
I know. I
And
know.
I'm just so glad that you're able to like speak on it, because you notice it. Like you're living it. You're like, yeah, nothing happens for me until I make the decision. Whereas like for me, it's totally different. Like
Mhm.
it's totally different. And
Mhm.
so it's just, wow, that's huge. And
Yeah.
one other thing, oh, well, is there anything else you want to say? I just want to reflect one other thing to you after.
Yeah, I think you just hit it on the head. It's just like, yeah, I have to keep moving. Like I
Mm.
can't wait. Like I have to do it. And like that's actually when my energy feels like it's getting unblocked. Like that's when things are like starting to flow. And like I'm just going to be honest, like I was trying to like find a way to like not be like that. Like I was trying to find a way to like, okay, you know what? Okay, great. Cool. I felt that response. I'm just going to give it a couple days and then I'll feel into it again and like feel what my response is. But it's like it's just you can't fake it, and that's what I was feeling. I was just like, Lil, this isn't working. Like you need you can't fake it. Like it has to be the real thing. And so yeah, I think the lesson too around like just the generator type is just about momentum.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
that's that's big. That's really big. And
Hmm.
that's like lived experience. That's like lived human design, which is really what we want to tap into. Um,
Hmm. I do wonder, for you, like, remember that situation that you brought up around the podcast where like my sacral changed? I
Mhm.
do wonder if we would have waited and your emotional wave would have kicked in if my response would have been different, even though we hadn't like pulled the trigger. Like I don't know. Like I don't know because we didn't do that. But I
Oh,
wonder, you know what I mean?
yes, because I remember I told you, I was like, well, I actually wasn't honoring my wave in that situation because I made a decision on the spot. I listened to my sacral.
Hmm.
I didn't honor my emotional wave. And so I wonder because, yeah, we wouldn't have moved in one direction.
Hmm. Like I wonder if it would have been enough commitment, you know, if we were like, okay, like this is the one, you know, in this specific situation. And then we gave it time, you know, that still felt like a committing energy to me. And then you were able to have your wave come back to it. I was able to come back to it and have a new response. Like, I wonder if we would have, I wonder. I just,
Yeah.
I don't know because it didn't happen, you know, but I was just curious about that.
Yeah, because I wasn't as excited about the song the next day. I was like, yeah, I like it, but I wasn't as excited about it. And so I feel like if I would have given myself that time and if I would have been really honest about like not liking the song, I mean, I probably would have been honest about it because like we hadn't committed to it. So I would have been like, no, I don't think that's it. But yeah, we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I think both of us are like, you know, living in response. So, right?
Yes.
Like you are too. So,
Mhm.
you know, maybe my response would have been different even without the commitment. So I think there's nuance there, but um it does it does feel like once I like turn it around too many times in my mind, it's like blah, like it's just getting all like mixed up.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally. This is so interesting. There's one thing that I really feel called to reflect to you too, specifically about your design and something that I've noticed in just, from our interactions and stuff and seeing you make decisions is so one of the fears that they brought up for in the program for undefined solar plexus undefined emotional centers is the fear of how people are going to react to you. Um and it's because like of your ability to feel people's emotions so intensely. And so you have this fear of like people exploding on you or like really reacting like super strongly to you. And I feel like that really coincides with like your the fear of acting on your sacral response. And that was like true. Remember when we were talking about all of this, I was like, wait, why did you think I was going to be so upset? Like I don't get it, like whatever. And I feel like that plays into that. And so that's just something that I feel like you can be really mindful of to almost help give you that confidence of like, okay, is this person really going to react that negatively, like that negatively? Or is this just like a fear that maybe I'm having from being able to feel so much? Because like in both instances, or in the instances that I can think of that you've changed your mind, like the people involved were fine, like they didn't explode on you or anything. And so I think like coming back to that too and reminding yourself of that, I think can help you with like continuing to anchor into that confidence to like move forward. And not saying it's ever going to be easy, but I feel like that's going to help you build your trust muscle a little bit better.
Yeah, because like half of it's confidence for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, both times I was like I don't want them to like freak out on me. And I don't know why. Like I think I'd be fine with someone like freaking out on me on the phone, but it just wouldn't be like a pleasant experience, and like I do feel things very deeply, and like I would be shook, and so I feel like that confrontation, yeah, definitely like made me more hesitant to just to like call it, as it was, like in that situation. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that reflection.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I feel like we could go on for days about this, but we'll leave it there for this episode. I hope that listeners, I hope you guys got something valuable out of this. And feel free to email the show with any questions if you have any about your human design and you maybe want us to cover it in a future episode. Send us an email. You can connect with us on Instagram. I mean, Lily and I love just being able to talk about these things in a way that's very applicable. And yeah, it just feels really good, and it feels like you can really take something out of it. So, thank you all so much for being here and for being on this journey with us.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. This was really fun for us, and just a nice little opportunity for us to kind of debrief, but in a way that was hopefully really impactful for you. So we are excited to talk to you next time, and we will see you in the next episode.